Hi, Bola. Let's look at your next batch of essays. So the first one is the popularity of school subjects in Germany. And yes, there's an error on the visual that we have. It should be schools. Now let's have a closer look at this. The pie chart illustrates or compares between the most famous academic curriculum in the Germany school in 2017, units measured in percentage. Okay. Yes, it's really good that you're trying to have a first introductory sentence. This is great, but we really need to fix some language here because it sounds ungrammatical. You can say illustrates and compares, but why using both why use both verbs? You could say the pie chart compares the most popular academic curriculum choices in a German school in 2017. Though I would say academic curriculum choices is a bit over the top. So perhaps you could say academic subjects and that's it. Most famous, I wouldn't say most famous, it's just a matter of preference, right? Overall, yes, and you can add a comma here and say the units being measured in percentage, which is okay. Overall, PE and history were the most preferred courses studied in the German schools, while IT was the least liked subject. Okay, so let's agree on one thing. First of all, we don't capitalize the names of subjects. We don't really need to do that. Two, it's not just one school. Look at this. It says in Germany, right? So it's not just one school in Germany. It's all the schools in Germany. So that's why we have to generalize and say schools here. And it's not about famous. It's about liked, loved, preferred, chosen, taken, up to you, but not famous. From the chart, it seems, and you don't need this comma here, that PE and history were the favorite core subjects, not curriculum. Curriculum is the whole collection of all the subjects that we study at school. That's curriculum, and the class planning and all that. But here you need to say core subjects, perhaps. Great use of the topical word core. Yes, like core subjects among the German students. Great. So both were less than a quarter. A quarter of what? At a proportion of 29 and 22. Okay, this is a fragment and it needs to be connected to the previous sentence. From the chart, it seems that they were the favorites. Both taking a bit, slightly less than a quarter from what? From the entire, let's say, from the entire distribution at a proportion of this and this respectively. Okay. Mathematics was the third most famous, again, not famous, but one of the things I told you, subject, just a little less than 1/5 of what? Of the distribution. This was subsequently followed by physics at this much. Okay. However, IT was the lowest course. Now, you cannot say the lowest course. You can say the lowest value, but not the lowest course. You can say the least preferred course in demand among or in German schools. You don't need to capitalize schools at a percentage of this, less than 1/20th. Why don't we use this and don't say the percentage? Because we can see all the percentages here. How about we use other wording to describe the same? This would be more valuable because this is what we have to do. We have to select and report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. We don't simply have to point at a value and say, look, history was this much. Look, math was that much. Okay. Biology was the third least popular course, which was, again, with a value registered or with a popularity registered at this many percent. Although prior to this was geography, the second most disliked course among the Germans in school, at a percentage of both less than 1/10. Okay, again, this is a subject and it's a very confusing sentence. I'm not sure I understand. Do you mean that geography came before biology? I'm not sure what you mean here, so I'm going to put this in bold and kindly ask you to rewrite this and perhaps reorganize and connect this to the previous sentence. I'm going to do it like this. And ask you to fix something in the sentence because I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about. So, I'm happy that you're trying to answer this using a certain range of expressions to comment on data, but try to keep track of the use of your language because sometimes it's difficult to understand because of the misuse of verbs or nouns or the word favorite. Also, try to compare as much as possible and see the trends, not just say that this was the most famous, this was the least famous, and whatever. Like this is really good because you say that PE and history, as we can see from the graph, were the most popular and the most chosen, the most preferred subjects, and they take almost equal shares in the entire distribution of popularity of the subjects. Anyway, this is a very nice attempt. Don't forget that perhaps it would be a good idea to have a one concluding sentence with a summary of the most important feature of the visual. Now let's have a look at the essay. That's the part-time jobs essay. Experts in both the developing and developed nations have debated if students should work part-time while in school or not. I believe there are more pros to learners being like this, or in part employment while in schools than cons. Word order. You need to fix the word order here. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from Oxford University and International Monetary Fund. Please make sure that before you use an acronym, you write the full form before you use the acronym. And then you will have the excuse my repetition, you will have the right to use the acronym because it will not create any confusion anymore. You see, a recent IMF study, and we know clearly that IMF is International Monetary Fund and not international, let's say, male friendship, something like this. I mean, I know that it is almost universal, but you never know. We don't want to create confusion. Okay, word order here. Okay, I believe there are more pros than cons to learners being involved in part-time employment while in school, and this is how we should fix this sentence. And this is fine. Okay. On one hand, education, no, you don't need to capitalize education, no, is a fundamental right. So perhaps here, after on the one hand, you should have the main argument for this paragraph because I'm not sure that this is the main idea of this paragraph. Because this is confusing. I'm not sure what I'm going to read about. Am I going to read about you're arguing for the fact that everyone should have education? Okay, let's see. Therefore, students should be allowed to concentrate on their classes or coursework, one word, while in school. Well, who doesn't let them concentrate? Because you are saying this as if someone forces students to work. Is it so? I'm not sure. If they are working part-time while studying, it may not be difficult finishing their education at the stipulate may not, or it may be. You probably mean it may be difficult to finish their education at the, let's say, planned time, not stipulated. You mean they won't be able to finish high school, let's say in 3 years and not in more. So and I would say if they work, you don't need present continuous here, no. Okay, this is basically because almost all jobs are demanding and juggling this with schooling. I don't think this is a very appropriate verb for an academic essay. You might say, and combining employment with schooling may affect the undergraduates. Okay, By undergraduates, do you mean university or college students, or do you mean the high school students? Because undergrad in English has traditionally a slightly different meaning, and that means the student of college or university who hasn't graduated yet. So this is a bit of a confusion. For example, a recent study by Oxford University scholars reported that two-thirds, plural, of employed undergraduates had to take extra semesters, and most had to spend more years in the university than required. Okay, in the university, now it's clear. Okay, because um, the way you started here, it sounded like you refer to school education, not post-secondary. Okay, I like the ideas in this paragraph, but please revise my remarks and um, try to rethink this sentence because it sounds as if people are made to work. Um, and please rethink the first sentence as well. You could say, on the one hand, despite part-time jobs being very useful for the student's pocket, this may affect the quality of their education. Right? So, and then you go and develop the argument. Absolutely. It's not that you have to start with the fact that it's a fundamental right, not really. On the other hand, there is ample evidence. Evidence cannot be put in the plural, no, that most corporations prefer employing individuals with some work experience rather than fresh graduates without one or without any. There are two main reasons, I would say, for what? For that. Let's stop here, period. Firstly, undergraduates who have worked while in school develop certain skills such as interpersonal relationships and learn about workplace ethics. Okay, great. These companies would rather train which these? If you say these, you refer to companies that you have mentioned before, but I'm not sure if you refer to the most corporations here. This is way too far, so perhaps you should say simply companies. Companies would rather train students as undergraduates than as graduates because the training cost would be lower than for, and this is a repeat, perhaps you could say, it would be cheaper before they complete their studies, something like this. So let's avoid repeating ourselves. Secondly, it helps instill discipline. What it? If you mean part-time jobs, you mentioned this a long time ago and we forgot what this it means. Perhaps you could say working casual jobs helps instill discipline in university learners. um, as, and you need a linking word, as almost every employer, you really have a thing with using singular and plural. Please, when you finish writing your text, always find at least 5 minutes to go over it and revise and see and ask yourself, are my singular and plural nouns okay, have I used them fine? So just make sure you do this because you can save yourself at least half a point in a band score. Almost every employer has specific resumption time. What do you mean by resumption? Um, what do you mean by this? Because I'm looking at the synonyms and I'm still confused. So please use another word or another formulation because I'm not sure what you mean. This instills discipline. Okay, you said instill discipline here, and you're repeating yourself again. One of the most important principles in using vocabulary is do not repeat yourself. Use synonyms. The working student and will teach students about time management. Repeat, student, students. But that's a great idea. Yes, it teaches them time management. Great. For example, a recent IMF study showed that the majority of the large industries prefer employing fresh graduates, plural, who had worked somewhere prior to leaving the university. Okay, this is basically because the cost is less if they are trained while still in school. You are repeating yourself again because you have mentioned this idea right here. Why would you say it again? So perhaps if you want to retake the main idea and conclude on the whole paragraph, you could say, thus, it is undoubtedly there's a huge benefit in working casual jobs because it, let's say, heightens your chances of being employed, something like this. To conclude, from my arguments, no, you don't need this comma here. To conclude from my arguments and examples given, I would say from the arguments and examples given, though being employed while in school may affect the studies of learners. Okay, look at this. You see, you have though here, and though is for contrast, and however is for contrast as well, so you don't need it. Though being employed while in school may affect the studies of learners, the students will eventually graduate from university, and most employers of labor, no, just employers, would prefer fresh graduates with workplace experience. I got your idea. It's great that you're retaking it in the conclusion. Um, I would say may affect negatively or may negatively affect the studies of learners, there is an advantage in this and that, which is this and that. So you should complete the sentence and rewrite it a bit. But anyway, this is a great essay and you have great, great, great ideas. Just mind my corrections and I'm sure that the quality of your writing will certainly, certainly improve.